gabung dalam acara Edge Insight for Industrial. And it's pleasure for me, Bapak Ibu, saya Sandra Insanasari dapat kembali menemani keseruan acara kita pada hari ini yang tentunya digelar oleh the biggest IT distributor in Indonesia, Synnex Metrodata Indonesia bersama dengan Intel dan tentunya didukung oleh Asosiasi IoT Indonesia. Tentunya kegiatan ini juga merupakan salah satu series ya Bapak Ibu dari rangkaian acara Indonesia HAI Challenge 2021. And before we go any further, I would like to greet our speaker today. Kalau di sini pagi, ini salah satu pembicara kita sudah malam di sini ya. Good evening, Mr. Daryl Hopland as the Software Developer Relation AI Intel Corporation. And also Mr. Guan Buntal as the APGT Intel IoT GFAE Intel Technology Asia PT Ltd. Good morning, Mr. Guan Bun in Singapore. Dan selamat pagi juga kepada Ibu Maria Kalangi as the IoT Aggregator Lead Intel Indonesia dan kepada Bapak Herianto selaku IoT and Cloud Business Development Director Synnex Metrodata Indonesia. And of course, first of all, terima kasih nih kepada Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman yang sudah hadir ya pada pagi hari ini. Sebelum saya melangkah lebih jauh, mau confirm dulu suara saya bisa terdengar dengan jelas ya Bapak Ibu ya. Boleh chat di kolom chat. Suaranya jelaskah? Ini yang hadir dari mana aja nih? Dari Jakarta apakah hadir? Oke, ada dari Majalengka. Halo, Pak Rizky Padilla. Jakarta hadir. Oke, kita kedatangan dari planet Bekasi hadir, Pak Sandy ya. Surabaya, Bandung, Jakarta. Wah, ini yang hadir macam-macam ya. Dari Makassar juga hadir. Yang hadir dari berbagai daerah, namun doanya tetap sama di saat-saat pandemi yang lagi meningkat ini. Semoga semuanya sehat ya. Dan ada yang ikut juga nggak kemarin, minggu lalu? Webinar kita terkait dengan OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow, ada yang datang juga. Kalau saya ingat-ingat nih di kolom chat, Ibu Nia hadir nih. Ibu Nia selalu setia, kasih jempol buat Bu Nia. Hadir juga Pak Agus ya. Pak Lutfi juga. Oke, ada yang ketinggalan nggak apa-apa. Yang penting nanti next-nya terus bisa ikutin terus karena kita masih ada seri-seri webinar selanjutnya. Nah, di sini mungkin ada beberapa yang baru ya yang hadir di sini. Tentunya yang pasti di sini yang hadir beragam, ada yang mungkin peserta dari HAI Challenge 2021, ada juga teman-teman lainnya, karena tentunya sekali lagi acara ini dibuka untuk umum, semua mempunyai kesempatan bisa ikut belajar langsung dari expertnya ya, terkait dengan solusi-solusi dari Intel. Nah, untuk yang hadir dari sini, saya mau tahu nih, sesuai dengan temanya, Edge Insight for Industrial, di sini yang hadir dari industri mana aja sih? Ada yang dari manufaktur juga kah? Bu Nia dari industri mana, Bu? Pak Agus juga yang sudah hadir di sini. Mungkin teman-teman di sini yang hadir kayaknya ada Pak Brian dari manufaktur. Ada lagi mungkin dari yang lainnya, oil and gas mungkin, otomotif. Oh, ERP consultant juga ada. Mungkin di sini kalau saya lihat datanya beragam ya yang hadir. Ada yang dari industri manufaktur, farmasi, oil and gas, nah finance services, otomotif, pokoknya berbagai industri ya, automation and robotic. Wow, keren sekali nih PT Widya. Ini salah satu ini juga ya peserta juga dari HAI Challenge 2021 dan tentunya semuanya di sini hadir beragam industri. Tapi kita punya satu kesamaan Bapak Ibu yaitu sama-sama berada di era digital di industri 4.0. Kita dituntut berkembang, ngikutin zaman ya Bapak Ibu ya, semua menyadari ini semua serba menggunakan machine learning, analisis data, dan memang ini data menjadi hal yang utama. Aktivitas industri, apapun industrinya, ini dibungkus dengan data. Tapi gimana nih cara memanfaatkan itu semua untuk bisnis? Bagaimana cara mendevelop solusi yang dibutuhkan? Ya, di sini Intel Edge Insight for Industrial Software hadir untuk membantu dengan tools yang sudah kita siapkan dalam bentuk software and framework. Tentunya Bapak Ibu, kita akan berikan gambaran nih bagaimana sih mendesain apps. Ya, seperti apa? Sampelnya juga tentunya sudah disiapkan oleh Intel yang tentunya bisa dioptimize yang berujung nih membawa manfaat untuk mereduce cost tentunya ya, dan tentunya paling akhir mengimprove operational perusahaan. Lebih jelasnya seperti apa? Ini sangat menarik sekali, kita akan diskusi bareng tentunya, dan tentunya Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman yang hadir di sini, ini saya bisa bilang orang-orang yang beruntung ya. Kenapa beruntung? Tentunya karena ini bisa mendapatkan informasi langsung dari expertnya yang hadir di sini. Spesial kita hadirkan expert dari Intel Corporation di US ya, untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman. Kita akan diskusi secara live ya. Kita akan diskusi seru. Jadi untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman, jika ada pertanyaan, ini silahkan untuk di-drop pertanyaannya di kolom chat yang telah disediakan, karena tentunya nih kesempatan tidak datang berkali-kali untuk membahas soal ini dan langsung dijelaskan sekali lagi oleh expertnya. Berkesempatan ngobrol langsung dengan perwakilan dari Intel Corporation Pusat ya. Jadi untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman, jika ada pertanyaan, case-case yang dihadapi, silahkan untuk di-drop pertanyaannya di kolom chat yang telah disediakan. Dan tentunya kita pun apresiasi sekali ya kehadiran Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman yang hadir di sini. Kita juga akan nanti hubungi ya. Kita sudah ada program early bird. Jadi nanti untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman yang sudah join lebih awal tadi, itu kita akan data dan kita akan berikan hadiah apresiasi uang digital OVO ataupun GoPay untuk 10 orang pemenang. Siapa saja? Tunggu nanti kita hubungi. Jadi silahkan isi feedback formnya untuk datanya supaya kita bisa calling tentunya. Dan di akhir acara Bapak Ibu, kita juga akan ada next schedule training, jadi jangan sampai ketinggalan, karena sekali lagi yang hadir ini expert-expert yang mungkin kalau Bapak Ibu cari pengen ngobrol bareng ini susah banget, tapi hari ini dengan mudahnya kita hadirkan di sini ya. Baik, tanpa berlama-lama Bapak Ibu, kita sebelum melangkah lebih jauh akan awali kegiatan kita pada hari ini dengan mendengarkan terlebih dahulu sambutan dari Bapak Herianto selaku IoT and Cloud Business Development Director Synnex Metrodata Indonesia. Kepada Pak Heri, saya persilahkan.
Ya, terima kasih Sandra. Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu semuanya. Senang sekali kita kembali berjumpa hari ini ya, di mana minggu lalu kita sudah mendengar pemaparan dan teknologi Intel OpenVINO diintegrasikan dengan TensorFlow. Nah, hari ini kita kedatangan tamu dan topik yang sangat menarik dari Intel ya. Mungkin buat yang belum paham Edge Insight for Industrial itu seperti apa, mungkin saya akan bisa berikan gambaran sedikit. Yang akan disampaikan hari ini akan berupa sebuah framework, tools, dan platform yang bisa digunakan ya oleh Bapak Ibu untuk mempercepat pembuatan sebuah aplikasi. Artinya nanti Intel sudah menyediakan sebuah tools yang membantu Bapak Ibu, khususnya misalnya kita kalau bicara computer vision, itu tidak perlu lagi membuat semua blok atau fungsi yang biasa Bapak Ibu bikin, tapi sudah disediakan dalam satu suite di mana Bapak Ibu tinggal fokus mengembangkan di sisi bisnis logiknya. Jadi contoh misalnya bagaimana sih kita capture data dari kamera, ya kan? Kita perlu belajar bisa bagaimana pakai FFmpeg, pakai GStreamer, atau kita bikin sendiri API atau engine-nya. Nah, itu sebenarnya dari Intel sudah menyediakan beberapa tools sehingga Bapak Ibu tidak lagi perlu mendevelop dari sisi hal-hal yang umum seperti itu, ya kan? Atau bagaimana kita menampilkan data ke dashboard. Nah, ini juga sudah ada tools-nya atau caranya, sehingga Bapak Ibu tidak perlu lagi membuat framework-nya. Nah, nanti sesi hari ini semoga cukup waktunya. Kalau saya lihat bahannya cukup banyak gitu ya. Jadi kita sama-sama perhatikan, bertanya gitu ya. Kalau nanti ada yang kurang jelas silahkan bertanya, manfaatkan kesempatan ini supaya bisa benar-benar mendapatkan ilmunya. Nah, selain itu juga ada satu topik menarik lagi adalah bagaimana nanti kita bisa melakukan distribusi aplikasi kita dan scaling dengan cepat. Seringkali kalau kita develop aplikasi, tantangannya adalah sudah buat, waktu mau deployment agak repot ya. Kalau deployment 1, engine-nya turun. Deployment 2, nah itu mulai masalah. 3, masalah. Nah, ini Intel juga menyediakan sebuah tools bagaimana kita bisa mempackage aplikasi kita sehingga kita bisa mendistribusikannya atau melakukan deployment di banyak tempat dengan cara yang jauh lebih cepat. Kira-kira itu saya harap session kali ini bisa sangat bermanfaat bagi Bapak Ibu semua. Selamat mengikuti, selamat pagi. Kembali ke Sandra.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Herianto atas sambutan hangatnya dan juga gambarannya singkat terkait dengan apa yang akan kita bahas. Menarik sekali kan Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman. Tapi tentu lebih dalamnya seperti apa kita akan bahas ya. Di sini kita sudah kedatangan expertnya dari Intel Corporation based in America, and now we would like to discuss our topic today about Intel Insight for Industrial. Ya tentunya bisa membantu Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman ini menghadapi tantangan industri 4.0. Bagaimana sih mendesain apps-nya, menganalisis beragam tipe data yang mungkin foto, video, or anything ya Bapak Ibu ya dengan teknologi dari Intel. Bagaimana proses deployment-nya? Tadi kalau kata Pak Herianto ini bisa dideploy, didistribusikan dalam waktu cepat dan lebih mudah. Nah, gambarannya seperti apa? Nanti kita akan bahas ya Bapak Ibu. And if you have a question during the presentation, just put the question in the Q&A box ya. After the presentation, we will read it. Jadi untuk pertanyaannya silahkan di-drop di kolom Q&A, jangan di kolom chat ya. Jadi silahkan pertanyaan-pertanyaan Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman di-drop di kolom Q&A yang tentunya telah kita sediakan. Nggak harus menggunakan bahasa Inggris Bapak Ibu, jika ingin menggunakan bahasa Indonesia, that's okay. Tentunya nanti kita akan jawab tetap pertanyaan-pertanyaan yang sudah masuk. Dan sekali lagi saya ingatkan, jangan lewatkan kesempatan ya untuk diskusi seru, untuk tanya langsung dengan expertnya yang sudah hadir di sini. And for this session will be present by Mr. Daniel Hovland as a software developer relation AI Intel Corporation. He has many years experience as a software developer and software engineer, and will share to you in the session. So please join me to welcome Mr. Daniel Hovland. The time is yours. Thank you.
Selamat pagi.
Pagi. Selamat malam di sana. Yeah. Okay, the time is yours. Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel, for your time.
All right. I'm sharing my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, you can see it.
I'm very honored to be with all of you here today, this morning, and I'm going to be speaking about Edge Insights for Industrial, which is Intel's video platform for scaling within enterprises using artificial intelligence and video in order to create metrics that will drive your business to more business use cases and more profitable results. So, since this is a technology talk, we're going to start with the architecture diagram. As we go through this, though, I'll explain a little bit of what this software is used for. So, first of all, I want to show you that this is based on a modular architecture. There are many different containers here that hold different programs that interoperate together in order to create this entire infrastructure. The software here is responsible for allowing you to set up video cameras and ingesting that video feed, and then using artificial intelligence on Intel hardware in order to create useful information from that video. So, for example, and let me switch over to this video here and show you what you can do with the default configuration of Edge Insights for Industrial. So what we've got it configured here to do, and I'll just move the video over a little bit more, is we have an image of a hardware board. And this hardware board might be in a factory, on an assembly line, wherever it might happen to be. And we have a artificial intelligence network that is designed to find areas on the board that have been improperly created. So if the solder joint is bad, or if it doesn't meet specifications, this AI program will view that as the circuit board is going by. It will identify boards that have been formed improperly. So I'll show you the whole demonstration here. This is mainly a demonstration of the setup of the software, which results in this behavior, but I can show you the video here. To create a defect, the circuit board will go in and out of the video, but while it's in the video. So what you're seeing there are images of the circuit boards that have been filtered so that the circuit board is in the middle of the camera, and then once that filter has taken place, some sort of AI is being applied to it to identify broken areas or poorly manufactured areas. This is only one application that you can do with Edge Insights for Industrial. There are many, many others. For instance, you can identify workers in a factory and where everybody is. You can see if they have proper safety gear on. You can identify trucks that are coming up to a truck port. You could identify the logos that are on the trucks or the license plate numbers of the trucks. You can use this technology to do defect detection on your industrial machines. So if you have a factory floor and you want to measure vibration, or if you want to measure the way in which a machine is operating, if it's working properly, you can do that through both a visual inspection and also through data and sensor-based inspections. So now that you know what it's for, let's return to the architecture here. The first thing you'll notice is that there is an Edge Insights internal message bus. This message bus is created by using ZMQ, which is a very fast pub-sub protocol that allows a bunch of different Docker containers to work together in concert in order to create an enterprise scalable video AI solution. So the first thing to notice here is video ingestion. This is where the process starts. So in video ingestion, you'll configure the GStreamer and OpenCV plugins. This will allow us to take in our video feed. We can use OpenVINO or OpenCV in order to perform operations on the video. But this video will be sectioned into still images, and the still images will be published onto the internal message bus. From there, a lot of other services can pick up these images and perform work on these images. So for instance, the video analytics container will often subscribe over the message bus to the video ingestion container. In the video analytics container, anything that is green in this diagram is created by third-party developers. In other words, it's created by you, the application developer. So you as the application developer can put in your own machine learning and deep learning algorithms in the video analytics container, and this allows you to perform your own video analysis on images that are being passed across the bus. So in the case of this here, this image is passed along the bus, and the video analytics container will use AI in order to draw boxes around areas that are malformed. Of course, you can do whatever you want with this. You can make it a people counter, you can read license plates, you can check to see if people have safety gear equipment, you can look at products that are moving along a product line and see if any of them are malformed. We have one company that uses injection molding. Basically, they have a mold and they put plastic into the mold, and sometimes the mold isn't properly filled. Well, they can look at what comes out of the mold using computer vision and tell very quickly if it is properly created or not. Another customer, a car manufacturer that is quite large in the United States, has been using this technology in order to automate inspections along their assembly line. So for instance, when the car's base is created, there are a lot of wires and a lot of bolts and a lot of things that need to be screwed together correctly. They used to have a person standing there who would go through a checklist, and there was some 200 items on the checklist. And when a person got very, very fast at it, they could do this in about 6 minutes. And now with Edge Insights for Industrial, they've automated that process. Now, instead of a person standing there with a checklist, they have a camera. And the camera takes an image of the car at that point in the assembly line. And within a couple of seconds, it can determine all 200 points on the checklist. So this is the power of AI and artificial intelligence, and especially with a scalable platform. The next thing to look at here is the image store. The image store allows you to save image frames that are on the bus to storage. So this will integrate with whatever enterprise system that you already have in place. A lot of people put their own databases here, but we have, for convenience sake, MinIO, which is an Amazon S3 compatible bucket storage. So if you want to save images for historical purposes, you can put them in the image store. Let's say, for instance, you have a scenario where you have an image of a circuit board that's coming in from the video ingestion. That circuit board image will go across the bus. It'll come up here to video analytics. Video analytics might highlight areas that are incorrect on the board. And maybe you want to save that photo for later viewing. Maybe the supervisor needs to be able to see it. Maybe the floor manager at the factory needs to see it. Well, in that case, the image store can subscribe to video analytics. The video analytics will put this image onto the video bus, and it'll be picked up by the image store or any third-party apps that you create. Or in the case of the bridge, we have a bridge to Microsoft Azure. And so if you need to store these images in the cloud or move them somewhere else, that's also a possibility. The next thing that I want to show you over here is the time series data ingestion and control. So Edge Insights for Industrial is not meant to be just a video-based AI system. It also incorporates sensors and numerical data. So if you have a temperature sensor or a vibration sensor, or you can sense the number of rotations in a motor, anything that can be sensed with conventional electronic sensors can be plugged into the Edge Insights for Industrial framework. You can also create your own third-party algorithms here in order to analyze this information. This information is often called time series information. So it's, for instance, a temperature at a given time, and that those two numbers are sent over to time series data ingestion. You can also perform automated actions based on the data that's going across using capacitor. And of course, storing that data in a database as well as ingesting it from multiple sources. Edge Insights for Industrial uses Telegraph, and Telegraph is capable of ingesting over 200 different types of protocols. So whether you are using, whether you're using MQTT PubSub, whether you're using HTTP or some other proprietary format, there's over 200 formats that are supported out of the box. Which covers many possibilities. But then you can also, if your particular format is not supported, you can write your own plugin here to support your own format. So the idea of Edge Insights for Industrial is that we're providing you all of this infrastructure that coordinates together on both time series and video data. And you, as the application developer, just need to create the deep learning algorithm, or do the third-party integration, or supply your own time series algorithms. So you do the customization, but the overall framework handles the infrastructure, the plumbing of the enterprise application. Of course, down here, there's orchestration. If you want to be able to deploy all of these Docker containers simultaneously, we can use Docker Compose, Kubernetes, Castle Lake. There's a variety of different orchestration platforms that can be used. These can also be used with the manageability framework, which involves the configuration manager. We'll be talking about that more. The other thing to call out here is that because this is the video is based on OpenVINO, we can use many different types of neural networks. For instance, we can use MXNet, we can use Onyx from Microsoft, Keras, TensorFlow, Khalid, and several others. So if you have an application and you have several different types of neural networks, you can plug those all into this infrastructure. All right. This runs on AliOS, Ubuntu, Clear Linux, several other varieties of Linux also. It's always good to have a UEFI that uses Intel Trusted Boot and Secure Boot. And of course, the platform is optimized for Atom, Core, and Xeon CPUs. The video analytics here, however, can be done on CPU, GPU, FPGA, or vision processing units, which are specialized pieces of specialized CPUs, or specialized processors rather, that deal with video information. Okay, so I talked you through that once. Let's go through a view of just the video analytics. First of all, you have the camera. which comes in right here with the GStreamer and OpenCV. Oftentimes this camera might be over a network connection, or maybe it's a serial camera where it's feeding you video information over a serial connection, or maybe it's feeding it to you over a higher level protocol like RTSP, or just streaming video. So all of these scenarios can be handled down here, and different types of cameras can be configured to plug into this framework. If you need more than one camera, you can configure multiple video ingestion modules. So you might have 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 video ingestion Docker containers, each managing their own camera connected to the system. Let's say you have a factory, and that factory needs 20 cameras in order to cover all the doors and windows. Well, you can create 20 video ingestion containers so that each of those cameras can be individually contained within the application and managed. Once the video frame is extracted from the video feed, it'll be fed to OpenVINO Toolkit, where you can perform what's called the filtering step. And the filtering step is, for instance, in the case of this image here, the filtering step is that you want to make sure that the board is in the center of the image. So filtering allows you to discard frames that you know are not going to yield results when it gets to your machine learning algorithm. And so if you know that 4 out of 5 frames in your video are not going to yield anything useful when put through the machine learning algorithm, then it makes sense to filter them out before they ever get onto the bus. So that is with this step here. Then when they get up here to the bus, you can use your algorithms in order to configure what the data is that should be derived from the video. And then that data, when it's created, will be put back onto the message bus so that you can send it out to a visualizer sample app or your own database or any third-party integration that you have. All right. Oh, my apologies. Here I should have been showing you that you can have multiple of these Docker containers running simultaneously. We support a number of different cameras. The one that is supported mostly is the Basler camera. Basler cameras are a standard within industrial applications oftentimes. They're serial-based cameras a lot of the time. You can use in the configuration file OpenCV and then create a pipeline with pylon source and show what the image format is. This is actually very useful, and in our configuration files, we have examples of how to configure different cameras so that the video is sent to the system correctly. You can use OpenCV, and this would be the configuration for OpenCV. You can use GStreamer, and this is the configuration for GStreamer. As I mentioned earlier too, you can also use RTSP, or the real-time streaming protocol. This is a protocol that's been around for a long time, but it allows you to stream video from one location to another over an IP connection, so using a network. And if you want to configure your cameras like that, we have examples of how to do that here, and of course in the configuration file as well. The same goes with USB cameras. So there's actually a wide variety of cameras that can be used with the system. And of course, if your camera can plug into a GStreamer pipeline or be opened by OpenCV, or potentially be opened by just a raw serial connection or a network connection, any of those ways for configuring a camera are valid. All right. The next thing to look at here is that when video starts and stops can be configured by a third-party application. So let's say you have a command center that your employees use in order to monitor everything that's going on within a factory. They can create custom applications that have start ingestion and stop ingestion, which will start and stop video feeds. And you can even send these commands to particular containers, so you don't have to stop all of them at once. You can just stop 1 or 2. But just know that that sort of integration for third-party apps does exist. There is an API that allows you to interact with the whole framework. All right. So next, GStreamer. GStreamer is a standard within Linux and open source for video feed ingestion. It's fully supported with Edge Insights for Industrial. GStreamer elements can only be used with the GStreamer ingester, and as inferencing options are embedded in video ingestion and the GStreamer pipeline. So what this is saying here is that you can actually perform inferencing directly within ingestion at the filter step if you really want to. But oftentimes what will happen is that you'll have a video ingestion Docker container, and you'll have one of these per camera, or maybe per 2 or 3 cameras. You can configure multiple cameras within a single Docker container. And the video analytics will be run on a much more powerful machine, or maybe 10 powerful machines. So you can separate out the taking in of the video from the machine that needs to analyze the video. All right, filter algorithms. So coming back up here, looking at this area right here, video ingestion. Video ingestion has a step that allows you to create a filter algorithm. And this is accomplished with the class UDF. And it's located, all the UDFs are located in the root directory of the project under the directory commons/UDF. So if you look into this directory, you'll see several different filters that are there in a couple of different languages. The languages that are supported are C++, Python, and also Golang. It's not mentioned here, but Golang is fully supported. So the purpose of this implementation is that there is a process function that you need to implement. The process function will receive a frame, and it will receive any metadata that's associated with the frame. This could be the color, RGB or BGR, depending on how the indexing is done. This might be the bounding box of the particular frame. But whatever the metadata happens to be, and it's user configurable, it'll be received down here, and you can process the frame. In the case of this particular example, the calculation that is done is that we measure the black distance from here, from the edge to the circuit board, and then from this edge to the circuit board. And when they're roughly equal, we'll use that particular video frame. So if the distance from here to here and here to here are significant, we know that the circuit board is in the middle of the picture. And then when that circuit board's in the middle of the picture, it will be, that is determined here in this process function. So the frame is sent in, that calculation is done. If the frame is to be put onto the message bus, it'll be returned from this function. If you don't return the frame from this function, the frame is simply dropped and it's never put onto the message bus. So you can eliminate frames, which brings the overall computational load of your application down. So the algorithms depend on the use case. Some people also use this step to do image preparation for the neural network. So let's say that your neural network requires all your videos to be, all your images to be certain dimensions. Maybe they have to be 480 by 480. So the resizing of the frame could take place in this function as well. Any sort of alteration to the video frame that you want to do before it's put onto the message bus can happen here. All right, and classification algorithms. So in addition to filter algorithms, you can also create classification algorithms. Of course, you can define this function to do anything you want. The only thing that's important is that you pass back the frame and the metadata. So in this particular case, we're going to use OpenVINO, the Intel distribution of OpenVINO toolkit, and the inference engine library. And we're going to analyze the image that comes in, and we're going to perform a classification. So the classifiers that you'll see here in this particular case are classifying this PCB board. That refers to this board right here, PCB board. So this algorithm is set up to detect these locations here. And this is in the video analytics container, by the way. And it will mark, it'll perform the neural network, putting any information out that your neural network will calculate. And then that information is put back onto the bus. Intel OpenVINO is recommended for optimizing deep learning models with this architecture. And the Intel OpenVINO engine has been a standard part of Edge Insights for Industrial since the beginning of the project. In fact, I kind of think of Intel OpenVINO as the library that you can use to write an application, but Edge Insights for Industrial will take that one application and it will scale it to 20 cameras, 100 cameras, and cover an entire factory floor. So if you want to write an application just by itself, you can use Intel OpenVINO. However, if you want to scale that application to an enterprise level, or create a product that provides a video AI service, you can use Edge Insights for Industrial. And we make this software available actually free of charge. You can just search for Edge Insights for Industrial Intel, and you'll find the page where you can download it. I'll also show you at the end of this presentation. Okay, so going back to the UDF is a function that the user can define that can either act as a filter, a preprocessor, or a classifier. The library itself is written in C++, but you can use C++, Python, or Golang. All right. Let's go on to the analytics section, or I'm sorry, the machine learning section and the time series data. So time series data can also be processed by Edge Insights for Industrial. In this particular setup here, we are ingesting MQTT, and we have a series of temperature sensors, here's temperature data, that are being sent via MQTT to the entry point within Edge Insights for Industrial. The entry point is called Telegraph. Telegraph is an open source project that allows you to ingest many different types of data. MQTT is one of them. So in this particular scenario, data is going to be coming in via the MQTT client. It'll be passed on to the MQTT broker, which is the standard way that MQTT works. And then another client, in this case, the data ingestion module, will be subscribed to this broker. The data ingestion module will forward that data onto InfluxDB. Incoming data will be analyzed by capacitor. So you could say something like, if the temperature is over 60 degrees Celsius, then raise an alert flag. And that would happen here. And that information can also be stored for historical purposes in InfluxDB or any database that you prefer. We also provide Grafana with this package for free. Grafana allows you to visualize data that is sent to InfluxDB in a browser. So here's an example of how you would set up the MQTT servers. There is a Telegraph configuration file in Telegraph config in the Edge Insights for Industrial software base. It has this particular configuration file. You would uncomment these particular areas. You'd specify your server, your timeouts, and the topics that you want to listen to. Topics are an MQTT feature. Each topic has data that transits over it. So in this particular case, you're listening to temperatures from a simulated device, and the device ID is 0. You can publish this data or create data for testing by using an MQTT sensor temperature that we've included in the software that'll generate temperature data for you so you can configure without having a live sensor. All right, in classifier, for instance, you can set up a UDF function. And in this particular case, the UDF function is run. You could specify it here in the point classifier.go file. And this function will be run, and the output of the function will be passed back to capacitor and stored back into the InfluxDB database. So one of the ideas here is that you want to be able to cover both video in your factory as well as sensor data that's coming from your factory, and it should all be handled by one system. Here's Grafana. Grafana allows you to create charts and graphs and to perform queries on InfluxDB. Grafana will let you visualize the data that's coming across your network about your factory in real time. All right. Orchestration and configuration. So configuration in a large system like this is extremely important, and we use etc.d, which is a key value service. This key value service holds all of the configurations for all of the Docker containers, including the video ingestion container, the visualizer, video analytics, the image store, time series, etc. You can use etc.d's browser in order to actually look at the configurations for each of the Docker containers that you're deploying. So in this particular case, you can see that the global environmental variables are listed here, the log levels for each of the different languages, whether developer mode is on or not. If developer mode is on, it doesn't use... Edge Insights for Industrial will not use encrypted communication between all the Docker containers. If you turn developer mode to false, then it'll use key value pairs and SSH encryption between all of the Docker containers. So when this is installed, feel free to go to this port here and go to etc.d keeper, and you can browse through the configuration of the overall system. This configuration Docker container is actually the first one that'll be launched whenever you bring up the system. The configurations are made available to the system, and then the individual Docker containers containing the cameras and the analytics engines and the integration with third parties all come online after that. Here's an example of the video configuration. So if you go down to the video ingestion configurator, you can specify the encoding. So you can say, hey, I want to extract video frames from the video feed defined here as JPEG. I want them to have a 95% quality level. I want to take them from this particular source. So in this particular case, we're actually specifying not a camera, but a video file as our video source. We can poll it every so often. We can create a number of queues that take video frames and pipe them through the system. And the more queues you have, the faster you'll be putting video frames onto the system. So you'll want to experiment with this value to see what gives you an optimal throughput. Then we have the number of jobs, number of workers, and finally the UDFs. This is an array that has arguments that will be passed in as the metadata to the UDF. Remember that if I go up here a little bit, back a few, or way back, sorry. Yeah, right here. This metadata function off the process will receive the data that was there in that configuration file. So this gets passed in here, and you can use it in your function in order to process your image. Now, if I go back down, here, you can see these are the configurations. All right, next, video analytics. Video analytics is very similar. We have encoding levels, workers, and a series of UDFs that can be run here. Notice this is an array, so you can have more than one function that's defined. And when you define more than one function, it runs in a chain. So that, for instance, PCB classifier would be run first, and then whatever's next in the array would be run next. And they're done in order very specifically, so that you can create chains of events that pass the frame from one UDF to the other, performing some operation at each step. All right, the visualizer will also let you label the data so that it can be displayed correctly on a monitor, or you can configure how a person that's viewing this data in real time sees the labels in the visualizer. All right. I'm going to skip over the orchestration for now because I know we're running a little bit low on time. I'm going to come down to installation. All right. So EIS, here's a quick setup guide. And if you are interested, I can also provide you a video that walks you through this setup process as well. First of all, you're going to go to the Edge Software Hub that Intel provides. This is the place that you'll be able to find various use cases that use Edge Insights as well as OpenVINO. And some of the projects here are just OpenVINO, some are Edge Insights. You need to click on them and see what software components they use. So for instance, Edge Insights for Industrial, they have up here a operational efficiency and safety. So in this particular use case, they are identifying people in the video. And then once they've identified a person, the software will identify, are they wearing an orange suit and are they wearing a yellow hat? And if they're not, it'll send out an alert. In this particular example, the manufacturing quality and inspection, there are stem bolts that are being produced. And a neural network has been trained in order to recognize when a stem bolt is correctly formed. So stem bolts can go by and it'll flag stem bolts that are not correctly formed. Predictive maintenance here, this is actually using the time series capability of Edge Insights for Industrial. And it is sending data into this particular model, and the model will let you know if vibration is going too high. So there's a vibration sensor that's on the hardware in this particular example, and that vibration sensor can be charted through Grafana, and alerts can be raised if the vibration level goes too high. All right, once you decide what use case you want, you just click on it. It'll ask you what version of the software you want to download, what your target OS is, and do you want video analytics and time series, or you can just select just video analytics or just time series. One of the strengths of having each of the containers Dockerized or put within a Docker container is that you don't have to run all of them. You can run just a time series analytics solution and you know, forget about video completely. Or you could run just a video solution, or you can combine the two. All right, next you'll select whether you want to use the Docker Community Edition or Docker Compose. After that, you'll finally be asked to select which modules you want to download. So download video analytics, the InfluxDB connector. If you want to be able to bridge this information up to Azure, we have a module that'll let you do that as well. And of course, time series analytics. There are optional components that you can download as well. The training and learning suite is actually a module that will sit off of the bus and watch the data that goes by, and it will learn what is standard and what, you know, it'll learn based on the data that goes across the bus. And then you can build a model which you can then put over into video analytics so that that data can be analyzed later. The package will download in a zip format, and you can click on the Getting Started guide. Once you do that, unzip the project, and you can go to the config_install file and find dev mode, whether what the default use case is, whether you have a trusted platform module, whether you're using TLS for communication between the Docker containers. And you'll run these simple commands in order to install the software. And once this Edge software install completes, it'll actually pop up the PCB demo that we had mentioned earlier. So it'll show you this Intel board. The images will be moving around because it's just selecting the images where the board is in the middle, and then it'll highlight any errors on the board. If you want to look at the Docker containers that are running, you can use standard, you know, Docker PS or Docker exec in order to go into the bash shell of any of these containers. It's all just regular Docker. So if you're familiar with Docker, this will be no problem for you. Wow, I didn't know that was there. Thank you very much, everybody. I assume that there are probably questions, but we are at the half-hour mark, so I will stop giving the presentation and I will start answering questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Daniel, for your presentation. and we will answer the questions. Dan Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman yang sudah hadir di sini, tadi kita sudah lihat ya bagaimana software arsitekturnya dari Insight for Industrial software. Tadi kita juga sudah lihat ada image store, video integration, video analytic, A-score, semua di dalamnya tentunya ini Intel provide untuk deployment solusinya. Dan setiap bagiannya juga tadi sudah dijelaskan oleh Mr. Daniel ya, seperti video ingestion dan analytic yang support beragam kamera, Basler kamera, RSTP kamera, USB kamera. Tadi juga saya lihat di kolom Q&A ada pertanyaan terkait kamera juga, nanti mungkin kita akan bahas. Dan juga kita sudah bahas terkait dengan deep learning model, machine learning and analytic. Sampelnya sekali lagi sudah disediakan sampai dengan tadi hingga proses downloading and installing from Edge Software Hub. Dan di sini sekali lagi kita diajarin scaling ya dari apps yang tentunya mungkin sudah kita buat. Ya, mungkin bisa sekali buat, biasanya sekali buat ini harus dibuat lagi. Kalau ini udah sekali dibuat, bisa dibuat di mana-mana lagi dengan minimal effort melalui tools ini tentunya. Dan untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman yang sudah hadir, kita akan menjawab pertanyaan satu persatu yang sudah masuk di sini. Oke, Mr. Daniel, there is a lot of questions for you. So we will answer it one by one. Yep. Okay.
Sure.
The first question is from Nanang Harjianto. Mr. Nanang asked a lot of questions, yeah. Okay, Mr. Nanang from PT Adiagraha. The first question is, what is the difference between edge and fog?
So the difference between edge and fog, fog is kind of an evolution of the edge. The idea of edge is that before there was the edge, there was the cloud. So we had a lot of our computing infrastructure that was focused in a third party's warehouse or infrastructure. And then the edge came along that said, well, I don't want to send all of my data from my local place up into the cloud. So I'm going to process some of that data here where I am, where the data is collected is the edge. So if data is processed where it's collected, that device that processes it is an edge device. Now the fog means that you might have multiple layers of edge devices at your location. So you might create video feeds on the edge and then have a system in the fog run the video analytics service. And instead of seeing a person, on the screen, maybe it'll reduce that entire video to just a text string that says, 3 people are present. So the fog are computers that are deployed still at the edge, but they're in between the edge and the cloud.
Okay. Semoga bisa dimengerti, Pak Nanang. We will try to answer the second question, Mr. Daniel. What about the application development and management side on edge intelligence, including all the software infrastructure needed?
So many of our customers choose Kubernetes in order to deploy this software. Kubernetes is fully supported. You can also use other configuration deployments. They are Docker containers. So any software that will deploy and configure Docker containers will also work with this system.
Okay. And the third question is, why not combine the intelligent controller and the edge, reducing one extra layer?
It's very configurable. So this system is actually built to be configurable. You can run the entire system on an edge device, or you can make it so that containers are broken up across multiple devices. So whether you create an intelligent controller or you just do all the processing at the edge, that's up to you. You can configure the system to perform any way that you think works best.
Oke, semoga menjawab Pak Nanang. Jika masih ada hal-hal yang ingin masih kurang jelas, silahkan untuk di-drop kembali di kolom Q&A. And the third questions, how do you propose to ensure security at the widely distributed edge now?
So that's a very long and involved question. There are a lot of answers to this, but the basic idea is that we start with Intel security built into the hardware. So the hardware has security measures itself. The firmware has security measures, and then creating encrypted communications are done by default. And then in terms of the actual the operating systems, we run on Linux, and so we recommend you have administrators that know how to secure those Linux systems.
Oke. Jadi untuk Pak Nanang, security ini juga sudah jadi fokus juga tentunya ya untuk dari Intel, jadi tidak usah diragukan kembali. Dan kita masih dari pertanyaan Pak Nanang nih Pak, and there is a questions too from Mr. Nanang. If the analytic can be performed in the cloud, what is the benefit of the edge approach? Is it purely to achieve a closer to real-time result?
No, absolutely not. The biggest reason you'd want to do that is the cost. Bandwidth sending data up into the cloud is fairly expensive. So if you can reduce a gigabyte file down to a couple of text strings through neural networks and AI, then that creates a huge bandwidth savings for you. Not only is it bandwidth saving in terms of cost, but of course it also reduces the amount of data that's flowing around your network when you process it at the edge.
Okay. And how about, is there a central organizing or controlling entity in a hive? Most of industrial have a monolithic applications. What will help break down those monolithic applications to leverage the hive approach?
Well, I think that is the message bus, and it was very specifically designed to be on a message bus rather than to be a monolithic application. So each of the Docker containers contain a single service, a microservice architecture. And those services all communicate to each other over the message bus. And this way it's much more scalable, and you can configure it in much easier ways.
Okay. Masih, we still the questions from Mr. Nanang, PT Adiagraha. How are current solution different or better than OSI, SOAP, PI, SAP, XMII, or others?
I actually don't know these solutions, and as an
Okay.
Intel employee, I can't comment on other people's solutions.
Okay, that's okay. So we move the second questions. For embedded edge device, is there opportunities for machine-to-machine distribute or cooperative control capabilities? Is it taxing for embedded edge device or better for single edge controller?
Is there opportunity for machine-to-machine distributed or cooperative control capabilities?
Yes.
I would say yes. I would think the whole system is designed like that. It's designed to be distributed across multiple machines.
Okay, and the last question from Mr. Nanang. Can an analytic company be just an edge consumer, or must have an edge computing capability as well for a blended offering?
There are a lot of different ways that you can provide services at the edge. Some of them do computing. Some of them are like databases, which may store the information for historical purposes. But an analytics company can, be an edge consumer or provide an edge service rather. It's up to them in order to determine what their customer base requires.
Oke, semoga untuk Pak Nanang pertanyaannya nih kalau saya hitung ada 6, 7, 8, 9 ya. 9 questions from Mr. Nanang. Thank you so much for your questions. Jika masih ada yang kurang jelas, silahkan untuk di-drop di kolom Q&A. Namun ada beberapa tadi yang tidak bisa terjawab. Mohon maaf seperti itu. Tapi semoga untuk jawaban-jawaban tadi cukup memuaskan ya Mr. Nanang ya, Pak Nanang. And we move to another questions from Frederick Budiman. Here are a few quick questions. Does the ML or AI feature hosted at the cloud or stays at the application? Is there any possibilities the ML and AI hacked by malware and distract its function and lead to false recognition? How to overcome the situation? Thanks.
I'm sorry, that question wasn't the next one that was on my list. Can you repeat that?
Sorry, repeat that?
Yeah, could you repeat the question?
Okay. Does the ML or AI features hosted at the cloud or stays at the application? Is there any possibilities the ML or an AI hack by malware and distract its function and lead to the false recognition? How to overcome this situation?
Well, I think this goes back to having a comprehensive security plan. These are run on, computer systems, and so possibility of malware attack is possible. But if you are using all the features, security features that Intel provides, it will help you in creating your security plan.
Oke. Semoga sudah cukup menjawab Pak Fredrik Budiman. Bisa di chat di kolom chat, namun jika masih ada yang kurang jelas, silahkan untuk ditimpa lagi di kolom Q&A yang telah disediakan. And we move to another question from Erlina. What is the minimum requirement regarding RAM, storage, processor to run the service smoothly? Any additional cost for plugins, feature for IoT implementation at manufacturing factory? Any accessory or running the service for IoT?
Yeah, so let's start with minimum RAM and storage requirements. You can actually look, we have on our industrial page at software.intel.com several different development kits. And so if you go to the industrial automation page on software.intel.com, you'll see that these kits are listed there. And many of them, there's also benchmarking that is available as well, but I don't have that here. But in general, having a large amount of RAM will be most useful. The application can run on Atom, Core, or Xeon processors. I would recommend, depending on your use case, a Core i5 or greater. But there are use cases which, for instance, on a drone or a mobile vehicle where you'd want to use a lower power CPU. The other possibility is using the Intel Neural Compute Stick, which is using Movidius technology. Movidius creates hardware-specific devices that process video. So they have a video processing unit. And the video processing unit is capable of doing a lot of video operations in a very small power envelope. In fact, the Neural Compute Stick 2 is less than 5 watts, and it performs calculations on thousands of images a second.
Okay, thank you.
Any success stories? There are quite a few, and we actually do showcase them at software.intel.com.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Mr. Daniel, dan semoga membantu Bu Erlina untuk menjawab untuk pertanyaannya. Dan kita move to another question, still from Fredrik Budiman. Can I store etcd in the memory so it works as a cache to speed up the operation? If can't, any advice for faster execution command, Mr. Daniel?
Actually, etcd is in memory by default. Okay. So it actually works that way by default.
Okay. Semoga singkat, padat, jelas, Pak Fredrik ya. Okay, we move to another questions. Could you show me the real implementation POC or project of ACE in manufacturing sites at the end user? For example, to detect compressor or oil pressure anomalies or anything?
I think the best way to see that is you can go to the Edge Software Hub, and we've got several different examples that are showcased there. So you can take those examples, you can download them, you can run them. There's also the Intel Dev Cloud. And the Intel Dev Cloud allows you to run different scenarios in the cloud. So you don't need to have the hardware at your location in order to run these. You can run the examples in the cloud and see the results.
Okay, semoga
menjawab. Sorry, Sandra, sorry mau motong dulu.
That's okay.
Kalau tahu ya, anonymous attendee ini, Bapak atau Ibu kah? Kalau mau tadi kan Daniel bilang buat atau bisa ke Dev Cloud ya. Kemarin itu kalau misalnya ngikutin dari awal series training kita kan juga ada Intel Dev Cloud. Nah itu bisa dipakai di situ. Atau kalau memang misalnya nggak ngikutin, bisa juga nanti minta tolong teman-teman dari Synnex Metrodata untuk Dev Cloud itu apa. Jadi untuk yang POC-nya dan lain-lain bisa tanya ke teman-teman dari Synnex Metrodata. Tentunya nanti teman-teman dari Synnex Metrodata pun akan ke kita juga, ke Intel juga untuk give it give it back lah jawabannya seperti apa. Tapi tentunya teman-teman Synnex Metrodata udah sangat familiar dengan DevCloud, Intel DevCloud itu sih, gitu.
Oke,
Gitu.
thank
Jadi
you Bu
nanti bisa
Maria.
kontak, ya bisa kontak Synnex Metrodata kalau kemarin belum istilahnya nggak ngikut yang training kita series yang Intel DevCloud. Nah, nanti kontak, nanti juga ini aku nggak tahu Bapak atau Ibu bisa langsung dapat, bukan langsung sih, nanti kita daftarin untuk bisa pakai Intel DevCloud. Gitu.
Oke, thank you Bu Maria. Dan
Sama-sama.
untuk anonymous attendee ini, Bapak atau Ibu silahkan untuk menghubungi teman-teman dari Synnex Metrodata Indonesia dan tentunya kita akan bantu ya. Jadi kita memang ada beberapa rangkaian acara di Intel Edge AI Challenge ini, beberapanya sudah dibahas. Kalau ketinggalan tidak apa-apa, nanti bisa menghubungi teman-teman dari Synnex Metrodata Indonesia. And now we would like to answer the questions from Brian, Mr. Daniel. How do we make sure edge computing can accelerate our deployments? As I know, edge computing software deployments occupy a middle layer between the operating system and application would open it.
So this is purely a matter of how you want to lay out your infrastructure. So you can put as many edge devices as you want on the edge. For instance, if you've got 5 video feeds, maybe you need 5 computers in order to analyze them. So how you develop your infrastructure is up to you. The system is very flexible so that you can deploy it in many different configurations.
Oke, semoga menjawab untuk Pak Brian untuk pertanyaannya, dan beberapa pertanyaan juga sudah dibantu jawab tentunya ya oleh Daniel in the Q&A box. Dan mungkin saya akan beralih dulu ke Bu Maria dari Synnex, atau dari perwakilan dari Synnex Metrodata Indonesia, Pak Herianto, apakah masih bergabung, Pak? There is a question from Christopher. As we know, Metrodata is an Intel partner. Is there any brand that Metrodata can supply the camera with computing power? Of course, industrial grade. May I know the brand? And I think this question is for Synnex Metrodata.
Kayaknya Pak Heri nggak ada, cuman aku bisa bantu jawab sih.
Oke.
Untuk merek-mereknya, karena aku bukan orang Synnex, mungkin nanti Larry bisa bantu jawab juga. Ada beberapa. Aku nggak bisa bilang merek, bukan nggak bisa bilang, cuman aku nggak tahu merek-mereknya, brandnya apa nggak tahu. Tapi for sure yes, Metrodata bisa melakukan itu, gitu untuk kamera ya.
Oke, jadi
bisa kontak dari Metrodatanya langsung ya Pak Christopher.
Oke, Pak Christopher, mohon maaf mungkin tidak menjawab secara menyeluruh ya, tapi tentunya nanti bisa dijawab di sesi selanjutnya ya, di luar webinar ini bisa ngobrol-ngobrol dengan Synnex Metrodata Indonesia, dan kita tahu SMI ini distributor IT terbesar, tentunya brand-brand ternamanya juga untuk kamera juga sudah banyak yang tentu juga bisa support ya, diintegrasikan dengan Intel, nanti bisa dikomunikasikan, untuk itu tentunya akan dibantu juga oleh teman-teman dari Synnex Metrodata Indonesia. And everybody, if there is another question, just put your question in the Q&A box. We still have time for answer your questions. And there is a question from Wahyu Wijaya, Mr. Daniel. How to prevent hacker or cracker attack and control our IoT infrastructure?
How to prevent a hacker or a cracker to attack or control our IoT infrastructure?
Yes.
I mean, questions like this really need a specific use case. So I think the way you do it is you hire a security person who knows how to secure machines.
Oke. Jadi tentunya Pak Wahyu dibutuhkan juga support dari brand-brand infrastruktur lainnya terkait dengan security nih, terkait itu ya. Jadi untuk Pak Wahyu mungkin bisa dicari-cari juga bagaimana nih untuk prevent hacker and or cracker dengan security solution yang tentunya juga bisa disupport dari teman-teman brand lain, karena tentunya semua ini harus terintegrasi juga ya. Oke, semoga menjawab. And everybody, if there is another question, just put your question in the Q&A box. But I think all questions today sudah terjawab semua ya Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman. I think Mr. Daniel, it's all the questions that you answered. Thank you so much for your answer and for your presentation. And is there anything you want to say it again, the summary or anything, Mr. Daniel?
Just first of all, that I'm very honored to be here and to speak to all of you. And if you want to get this software, it has a free license, zero cost, and you just go to the Software Edge Hub in order to download it.
Okay, thank you so much once again, Mr. Daniel. It's an honor to us too, to have you in this webinar. And stay safe, Mr. Daniel. See you in another event. Bye, thank you so much. Oke, untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman, tadi juga Mr. Daniel sudah mengajak kita untuk mencoba memakai software-nya, ini free license, jadi jangan sampai dilewatkan juga. Jadi sudah didengarkan, tinggal dipraktekannya nih ya, jangan sampai terlewat. Nah, untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman yang sudah hadir di sini, sekali lagi semoga pemaparannya tadi diberikan bisa benar-benar dimengerti, bisa menjadi solusi, bisa menjadikan tambahan informasi wawasannya terkait dengan Edge Insight for Industrial ya, untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman di sini yang hadir dengan kita mensupport solusi tools dari Intel untuk membantu deployment solusi dari Bapak Ibu. Bu Maria, masih ada yang ingin ditambahkan lagi, Bu?
Kayaknya nggak dulu. Aku cuma mau bilang terima kasih buat teman-teman yang sudah hadir. Next kita masih ada beberapa training lagi, series training lagi. Jadi hopefully pada bisa join, karena sekali lagi yang datang juga teman-teman engineer kita dari US. Kita bring mereka untuk adain webinar di sini. So ini kesempatan yang langka, jadi jangan dilewatin, gitu sih.
Oke.
Thank you teman-teman semuanya.
Thank you so much, Miss Maria, Bu Maria ya, thank you so much. Dan kepada Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman, tentunya ini saya lihat hari ini aktif sekali, pertanyaan yang masuk pun banyak banget ya, dari webinar ke webinar ini memang selalu aktif dan makin ramai ini. Jadi senang sekali tentunya ya, Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman di sini hadir dengan semangat, walaupun virtual, tapi tetap semangat ini semangatnya bahkan mungkin melebihi offline ya. Jadi untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman sekali lagi thank you so much. Dan saya mau ngajak Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman ini tidak hanya berhenti di sini saja, tapi bisa mengikuti webinar kita selanjutnya karena sekali lagi ini series dari Indonesia HAI Challenge 2021. Kita banyak sekali kegiatan-kegiatan yang bisa mensupport Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman untuk mengerti lebih dalam ya terkait dengan deployment, terkait dengan solusi-solusi yang dibangunin, bagaimana caranya kalau bingung. Di sini tentunya sudah kita bantu dengan menghadirkan expert-expert yang luar biasa, dan bisa dilihat nih jadwalnya, bisa difoto, bisa di screen capture tentunya. Jadwal terdekat ada di tanggal 30 Juni 2021 di jam 9 ya, terkait dengan Intel HAI for Vision Retail. Nah, ini jangan sampai terlewat Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman. Ini yang hadir expertnya juga luar biasa. Kita juga akan lihat nih posternya akan ditampilkan di layar. Silahkan untuk mendaftar tentunya ya Bapak Ibu ya. Jangan sampai tidak, dan bisa mengajak juga tentunya teman-teman di luar sana yang ingin belajar, pengen tahu lebih dalam ya. Silahkan aja, kita terbuka untuk semuanya di sini. Kita akan bagikan informasi-informasinya, solusi-solusi dari Intel yang bisa membantu Bapak Ibu. Dan untuk di tanggal 30, ini dia pembicaranya. Ada Christy Rice as a Director Retail Segment Internet of Things Group Intel Corporation, and also Miss Sindu Pandian as a Software Engineer in IOTG Intel Corporation. Nah, untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman yang sudah hadir, silahkan untuk men-scan barcode-nya, difoto dulu ya, seperti itu, seperti ini. Ya, nanti akan tertaut ke link, dan silahkan untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman daftar nih. Tentu pembahasannya juga akan menarik sekali, jadi sekali lagi jangan dilewatkan kesempatan ngobrol bareng, discuss dengan expertnya, seperti yang tadi sudah kita lakukan ya tentunya. Baik, untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga teman-teman, sekali lagi saya ingatkan bahwa tadi yang untuk sudah join ya 10 orang lebih awal, tentunya kita sudah berikan program early bird, nanti akan dihubungi ya. Jadi mohon ditunggu, kita akan hubungi melalui nomor telepon yang tertera di saat pendaftaran. Mohon ditunggu, dan akhir kata kita sudah sampai di penghujung acara. Semoga materi yang diberikan ini bisa bermanfaat, menambah pengetahuan, wawasan, dan tentunya saya lihat ini kemauannya luar biasa ya, semoga bisa berkembang dengan solusi-solusi yang ditawarkan oleh Intel tentunya. Semoga silaturahmi senantiasa terjalin Bapak Ibu bersama dengan Intel dan juga Synnex Metrodata Indonesia. Dan sekali lagi, jangan hanya belajar saja, tapi harus mempraktekannya secara langsung ya. Jadi sebagai bangsa Indonesia, kita jangan hanya menjadi consumer, tapi kita harus bisa menjadi produser nih ya. Solusi-solusi, ide-ide luar biasa. Akhir kata saya ucapkan terima kasih banyak. Sampai jumpa di training berikutnya. See you, have a nice day, and stay healthy everyone. Bye. Thank you, Bu Maria. Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel, Mr. Bandu.